Welcome to Risky Bitness. Today we'll be continuing our Fatal Fury series with a retro review of Real Bout Fatal Fury Special. If you're enjoying these videos, please like, subscribe, and enable notifications so you don't miss an episode. Every like, subscribe, and comment helps me make better content for you. So if you have any comments, corrections, or questions, sound off down below. I'm still growing here as a content creator, and I'm really still learning the ropes, so I really want to hear from you. Let me know what you like about the channel, what you don't like. If you really like something about one of these videos, tell me about it. If you really dislike something about these videos, tell me about it. If you would prefer more trivia, more history, more gameplay, more anecdotes, more anything, or less anything, please let me know. I want to make this the best I can. So now, without further ado, let's get into it. So just like Fatal Fury Special, Real Bout Special is a remake of Fatal Fury 2. Don't let anybody tell you different. It uses the same cast of characters, with Krauser as the end boss. It was released to arcades in 1997. To put it into perspective, this release came after Capcom Street Fighter Alpha 2, but before Street Fighter Alpha 3.
Be tough or be dead, big guy. Ready? Go!
And that's important because a lot of people remember Street Fighter Alpha 3 for the announcer voice, and it was the first time in a fighting game I ever heard somebody, and the announcer, before the matches, he says, "Beat 'em up, guy, triumph or die." Fatal Fury was doing that in this game before Alpha 3 came out, and the reason I mention that is because I want to reiterate before I talked about this. A lot of people, especially in the US, we feel like Fatal Fury is kind of an imitation of Street Fighter and King of Fighters is kind of an imitation of Street Fighter, but really, they kind of both imitated one another way from the beginning. As I discussed before, the same person who directed the entire Fatal Fury series directed the original Street Fighter. It's his baby. So the two companies definitely had a lot of influence on one another. Now, I also mentioned previously that SNK games are more popular outside the US, and I did a little bit more research about that, and I found out it's really specifically King of Fighters that's really popular, and that's especially true in Latin America. It's even more popular there than Street Fighter is. I didn't really cover this too much in my first Fatal Fury or Neo Geo video, so I'm going to cover a little bit more here, but many players outside the US know the characters and story of Fatal Fury pretty well. And I think that's one of the reasons why it didn't really catch on quite as much here in the US is because we got Street Fighter 2 first, and also MVS cabinets were not quite as common in the US as they were in Latin America. Possible reasons for that are cost. MVS units, you could have 4 games in one spot, taking up less space in your arcade, and it was much cheaper to swap those out than to swap out full cabinets. So the MVS cabinets, I think, were really popular in kind of developing economies like that. Now, I think the characters kind of hurt the game a little bit too. Like I said before, since we got Street Fighter 2 first, a lot of the characters to us kind of seem like knockoffs. But really the biggest problem character-wise, I think, is Terry, because Terry's the hero of the game, and I like the character of Terry. A lot of people really like him and are excited to see him in the new Smash game, and a lot of people were kind of confused by his inclusion in the new Smash game. But I think the reason he never caught on that big here as he did outside the US is because he seems like such a parody of an American to us. But you have to understand that Terry was the ideal of what a Japanese game developer in 1991 thought a young American man would be like. Everything about him, the way he dresses, the shouts he uses for his moves and his taunts, all his mannerisms, they're all based on, this is an American guy. He wears blue jeans, he wears a baseball cap. He has that move called Power Dunk, which is basically a basketball dunk turned into a fighting move. This is what the producers of Fatal Fury thought an American was like. So it comes off kind of as unintentional satire, I think, if you're an American. Like, almost like if Tommy Wiseau created a character who's an all-American fighter, Oh, hi, Andy. But to us, it kind of comes off, really satire, parody, silly. Whereas to the Japanese, he was, this is an American. To Latin Americans, they didn't really have a frame of reference or any reason to be upset about or dislike it. He was just a character in the fighting game, and he's probably pretty cool if you look at it that way. He's got long hair like a rock star. I don't know, I always kind of liked him. But I always liked that kind of rock star sort of a character, and that's what I saw when I saw Andy. I saw a rock and roller with long hair. So that was neat. Now, Real Bout Special introduces EX versions of some of the popular characters, and that's pretty cool. I'm going to dive into those a little bit more later, but basically they sort of split up the character into two versions. One sort of regular, fair, balanced version, and a more powerful version that could be used with a special code. Definitely had nothing to do with Capcom introducing Evil Ryu, right? But again, Capcom created the character of Dan to mock SNK prior to that, so let's bear that in mind. Now, once again, each character has his own background, so it's not just a handful of backgrounds like it was in the last game. The stages are really pretty, and they have these really nice pre-match animations that remind me a lot of the Samurai Shodown animations. Those are really, really good. And while Geese Howard doesn't appear in the game, there is a Nightmare version of Geese that can be unlocked as a special hidden boss battle. I have not unlocked it because I'm just not that good. But you can fight against him, and apparently in some of the ports and console versions, of which there are many, you can actually play as him with a special code. But we're not talking about those versions today. Today we're sticking to the Neo Geo. Because if I start talking about the ports, this is going to be another 20-minute video. So let's talk about the story. So SNK doesn't actually officially name this as a remake of Fatal Fury Special. Officially, this takes place after the events of Fatal Fury 3 and Real Bout Fatal Fury. I'm not so sure that I buy that. So officially it's not a remake, but it's a remake. It has the same characters. Wolfgang Krauser is the boss. It's Fatal Fury Special again. I guess they didn't want to retcon the whole thing again. So at the end of the first Fatal Fury, Geese Howard was killed by Terry Bogard. His half-brother, Wolfgang Krauser, who is the Earl of Stroheim out there somewhere in a fictional part of Europe, decides to seize this opportunity to take hold of Geese's criminal empire. He's also curious to meet the man who killed Geese and decides to continue the King of Fighters tournament, not only to steal Geese's wealth and power, but also to stand face to face with the only man strong enough to defeat him. So I think they really did want to remake that game without doing a whole story retcon. That's exactly what this is. This is bringing Fatal Fury 2 and Fatal Fury Special into the next engine, the next graphics engine and gameplay engine that they introduced to the Neo Geo. I guess somebody really liked Fatal Fury 2 and Special. Some noticeable changes from Real Bout Fatal Fury are that they brought back the 2-lane system instead of the 3-lane system, which I feel is a much better way of handling the oversway system. I think the 3 lanes was a little bit too much. And you can no longer knock your opponent out of the ring. Instead, there are breakable objects at the end of either stage. Once they take enough damage and become destroyed, the fighter who is sent through them will become dizzy. A lot of movesets have been simplified. The command inputs are now easier. Moves that didn't really make sense in the moveset have been removed. And there are fewer moves that push the opponent into the other lane. A lot of characters no longer have those oversway type attacks. You can pull the opponent back into your lane by pressing C and doing a hard strike, which really simplifies the entire oversway game quite a lot. You can also fight in both lanes now, so you no longer have to just jump out of the lane and jump back in. You can fight in both lanes. Otherwise, the system's identical, the chain combos are still there, the break shots are still there, defensive attacks work the same way, and the meter works the same way. Break shot now says break shot on the screen when performed. They're kind of like alpha counters in Street Fighter Alpha. You interrupt an opponent's offense by swinging the direction of the fight back into your favor. Defensive attacks only interrupt a string and they don't knock the opponent down. So while defensive attacks can give you an opportunity to break the offense, they don't absolutely break the offense the way that a break shot does. Now, the thing about the stages that I mentioned before that is a little disappointing is that there are only 9 stages altogether, which is still, I guess, pretty good, even though there are 16 characters in the game. But the thing about the stages is that some characters share a stage, and some stages have like multiple versions, and you'll see them more than once in a single playthrough, which is a little bit of a bummer. So those stages, of course, are the beach, Japan, Brazil, South Korea, China, Hong Kong, Billy Kane's studio, Germany, Krauser's castle, and the hidden Geese Tower stage in the Nightmare Battle. All the characters from Real Bout Fatal Fury have returned. There are 4 characters that now have EX versions like I discussed before. Those characters are Andy, Blue Mary, Billy, and Tung Fu Roo. Tung Fu Roo is a master of Hakyo Seiken, and he is the teacher of both Geese Howard and Jeff Bogard. That's a big part of the story for the original and for Fatal Fury 2 because Tung Fu Roo is the reason that Geese murdered Jeff. Tung Fu Roo chose Jeff as his successor, and Geese murdered him out of jealousy. Tung kind of fits the mold of the wise old martial arts master. He's like the Mr. Miyagi of the game, and they sort of play that up for laughs apparently in the lore, of which there's not too much in the game itself. I think you kind of have to guess at that. There's a lot of extended lore and extended universe that I had to look into to learn more about the story and the characters for this video. You don't see too much of this in the game, but Tung Fu Roo is the guy saying, "Don't concentrate on the finger, or you will miss all the heavenly glory." If you recognize that quote, please talk about it down there in them comments. You know what it's from, I know what it's from, let's talk about it. And if you're gonna break some bricks, bottom one. Cheng Sinzon is a self-made, wealthy businessman who has entered the King of Fighters tournament to market his new business, a martial arts school. Cheng is comically overweight, and he's often portrayed as lazy and tiring very easily. Apparently he's modeled after one of the game's designers, but I wasn't able to confirm just which one. If I was that guy, I'd be pissed. Now the boss characters, they are selectable at the beginning of the game, so you can play as them, but you can't choose them as your first opponent. They have to be fought in order. You fight Billy Kane about halfway through the game, and he's super broken, as he's always been. It's almost kind of like a joke at this point that in every game, Billy Kane is just incredibly broken. He's so cheap, he cheats, it's ridiculous. If you're playing on anything over like level 2, he's just ridiculous, like he's unbeatable. It's insane. I never even fought Lawrence Blood at a higher difficulty at this point, because I had enough after my 10th try of beating Billy. But Lawrence Blood, he's a bullfighter. His family has been loyal retainers to the Krauser family for generations. He's steadfast in his duty, considers himself a man of honor. He's a very cool character. And of course, Wolfgang Krauser, the Earl of Stroheim, half-brother of Geese Howard, tried to murder their father. Actually, no, correction. Geese tried to murder their father. Krauser later finished the job. Seized his position as the head of the family there in Europe, whereas Geese fled to the US, was left in the US by his father. A lot of interesting history there. So Geese left in the US by his father, resented his father, tried to kill him. Krauser, not left behind by his father, killed his father to seize power over the family. Now that Geese is dead, comes to the US to seize all the power of Geese Howard and his sort of organized crime family. He staged the King of Fighters tournament in an attempt to steal all of Geese Howard's wealth. He's powerful, he's evil, he's cruel, he's ruthless. He's a bastard. So now coming up back to the gameplay a little bit, the EX characters are a really cool little feature that was added. To play as an EX character, you have to do a complex series of button presses. What you have to do is select the character that you want to play as, either Andy, Mary, Billy, or Tung. You have to hold the start button the entire time. You have to press B, B, C, C, press and hold B, press and hold C, and then with start B and C all held down, press A or D to select the character, and then you'll get the EX version. And I apologize, there might be a little bit of noise on the recording here. I have a cold, so I apologize. So now the differences in the EX characters to their regular counterparts really varies quite a lot from character to character. Regular Andy no longer has the powered up melee Hishoken, so he can't do that big giant melee fireball. He doesn't have that back handspring kick move anymore, he doesn't have an air throw anymore. It kind of feels like they split him in two. The EX Andy fills in the gaps though. He has the big fireball but no long range version, so no zoning. He has no Shoryudan, so he doesn't have the Dragon Punch type move. He does not have the flying Hohodan kick that clears half the screen. They both have the Zaneiken, the running shoulder strike, but regular Andy can follow that up with a command throw, and EX Andy just knocks you down when he does it. EX Andy is sometimes called Shadow Andy, and the fire effects of his special moves are replaced with shadow effects. And for his power super, instead of doing a Zeneiken followed by a Hohoden kick, he does a Zeneiken followed by a power-up Hishoken instead. So, I actually really like EX Andy, he's pretty cool. EX Billy, he doesn't lose any of his moveset, instead he gains some additional moves. He gets a hard version of his block and counter technique. When you hear me talk about those are techniques where you do the input, and then the character will do like a defensive position, and for a second or two, any attack that they receive, they'll reverse into a throw or a takedown of some kind. He now has a hard and soft version of that, and his power super is now an anti-air fiery uppercut with the staff. So that's a notable improvement to who is really just already a very, very powerful character. I really like EX Blue Mary a lot. She has a command dodge that causes an attack to miss with no damage if it's timed correctly, so it's a lot like the parry in Street Fighter 3, only when you do it, you can then grab the opponent into a backbreaker. She also has a regular command strike that's a kicking uppercut, so that's an anti-air and a combo cancel. Her throw is now, as an EX version, is a Tomoe Nage, which if you're not familiar with Judo or Jiu-Jitsu, a Tomoe Nage is the monkey flip. And she can combo that into an Achilles lock. So she'll put her foot and roll back, she's going to throw him over her head with her foot, but then if you time the command correctly, she'll grab the leg and do an ankle lock instead. Her Mary Snatcher move is now an anti-air, so she'll jump in the air and grab the opponent that is jumping in, tackle them down, and do a knee bar. And she can combo that into a face lock. She loses her counter moves. She doesn't have any of those counter moves I was talking before, but she gains the Mary Spider, again, that she had in the last game, where she jumps into the air, takes down the opponent, and hits him with an arm bar. She also gets a power super that is this big overwhelming combination of wrestling moves that ends in an airplane spin, and it's really, really cool. Her power super, her regular power super, is now her regular super as EX Mary. She actually has a new power super that has a Raging Demon-like input, and that's the same one I mentioned before, but the input is now a Raging Demon input, which is kind of cool. So she's one of the more complex characters in the game. Her EX version is more powerful and complex. Really, I'm an Andy player because I'm a Shoto player, but I like EX Mary a lot, and I feel like if I played this game in its heyday more, I probably would have had her as my main character that I play as. Now, Tung Furu's EX mode contains moves that are called ancient versions of his regular moves, but they're really not any different. The only big exception is that there really is no big exception. I was going to say there is a big exception, but there's not. It's not that different. The only thing is that his power super is the rising kicks is his power super. That's the only difference. And now his regular power super is his regular super. If that isn't too confusing. But we can break down the newer characters, or at least new to the Real Bout series. So given Tung Furu's martial arts lineage, it should be no surprise that he uses techniques that are a little similar to Terry's with some changes. He's got an attack that's kind of like the Burning Knuckle. He has an attack called Power Wave, but it's a short-range air projectile. And he has an anti-air where he breathes fire upward. He also has a really funny special taunt. He has no problem at all just toweling himself down in the middle of a fight. It's pretty funny. The super move allows him to turn into a giant muscle-bound brute and deliver spinning clotheslines across the screen. It's pretty cool. So if you remember from the first Fatal Fury, that was what he would do, is he would turn into a big muscly guy for a few seconds. And that's kept in here in his power super. He also has a small hitbox like the Jin brothers do. Chang Sinzan can volley a fireball at his foes. Sorry about that. He can volley a fireball at his foes either straight ahead or upwards. He can also expand his belly for a diving attack, or set up a rolling counterattack. He can also roll across the ground. For his super move, he lobs a lightning ball at his foe. Lawrence Blood fights with his red cape and his estoque. That's his sword. A bullfighter sword is called an estoque or estoque. Using the cape, he hides his attacks. He has a lot of finesse and agility, and he has several moves with multiple strings, like a charge that can hit 3 times and a combo into an air attack, as well as an aerial leap that can be followed up by throwing his sword or striking with his cape. For his super move, he unleashes a brutal flurry of sword cuts. And Wolfgang Krauser plays like a wrestling type character, very fitting with his very large stature. He has several grab and throw moves. He can do a flying body splash or drop the elbow on a fallen opponent. He has a couple of projectiles, high and low. He has a flying kick, and a very devastating counter slam where he lights you on fire and slams you to the ground. His super and power super have complex inputs that are difficult to master. I can't do them. I can do his regular super a little bit, but it's hard to time it right. Now, in this game, I find that it's very hard to cancel into supers. In all the Fatal Fury games, I find that, so I have a really hard time canceling into supers. If you can give me a tip on how I can cancel into a super in this game, then please let me know it down in the comments below. Real Bout Special has the best music of any Fatal Fury yet, with some real rocking tracks. Billy Kane's stage is definitely a high point. Have a listen to some of the sound and music of Real Bout Fatal Fury Special. Real Bout Fatal Fury Special was definitely the best game in the series up to this point. It simplified a lot of the movesets and inputs, and returns to a two-plane fighting system, so that was very, very welcome after the overcomplicated oversway system. It's a big improvement. Although an additional dimension of movement and letting players fight there instead of making it a quick in-out system, I mean, that's huge. The old system now feels terrible after getting used to this system. My only real complaint about this game is that the single-player mode is still plagued with broken AI characters, so I had to turn the difficulty down a lot in order to make it reasonably playable. But to breathe at level 1, at like level 2, it's fun. At level 3, it's a little challenging. Anything above level 3 is really brutal. Well, thank you very much for watching Risky Bitness. So next week, we're going to interrupt our regularly scheduled program for our Halloween special with a very special guest host. Now, do you like this format? Do you prefer more history and trivia? Do you prefer more gameplay review? Let me know in the comments. Again, I want to make this channel good. I want to hear what you like, what you want to hear, what you want to see. And if you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, and enable notifications. It really, really helps me quite a lot. Leaving a comment helps me massively. This is a fledgling channel. I'm new to this. Constructive criticism is welcome. And I really want to thank you for any feedback you can give me and for spending your time with me here today. Until next time, game over.